So, to all the women here, welcome to our Women's Day special. This is a 9-class series where the purpose of this is twofold. Today, we're going to talk about women and scriptures, the Vedic view versus the modern view. Very briefly, we'll touch upon it. And then over the next several days, we're actually going to talk about great women from our Vedic scriptures. We're going to look at exalted devotees of the Lord like Kunti Devi, like Mother Sita, like Mother Yashoda, like the Nagapatnis, the wives of Kaliya, the snake that was quite upset when Krishna dived into the river and disturbed him, apparently disturbed Kaliya while he was enjoying himself. Then there is a beautiful pastimes of the Brahmanas with Lord Krishna. How do the Brahmana Patnis conduct themselves? What exalted devotees they were. How is it that they understood so much of philosophy, so much about spirituality, even though they may never have actually gone to a Gurukul? In our Vedic culture, in our Sanatana Dharma, Gurukul means it was meant for very young boys. So, starting from the age of 5 or 6, parents would leave their sons in Gurukul so that they could learn and understand the scriptures first. It didn't matter what your varna was. So the Gurukul was accessible to the Brahmanas, to the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas. So all three of these classes in society would send their sons to Gurukul. And in Gurukul, you were educated about Vedic culture. You were educated about so many things. If you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord Himself goes to school, the Lord being the Lord of the whole universe, Lord Krishna. He also has a guru, and from his guru, he learns 64 different arts. So, Krishna was learning how to do rangoli, how to stitch clothes, how to fashion a bow and arrow. So many 64 different arts are mentioned in the Shastras that the Lord Himself learned when he was in Gurukul with Sandipani Muni. So it is not that boys were only taught about boyish, mannish things. Men were taught how to cook. Men were taught how to run a household. Men were taught how to worship deities very nicely. So men were taught everything that they needed to know in case they did not want to get married and they had to live brahmachari lives, then they had to know how to take care of themselves. So cooking was part of it, cleaning was part of it, managing a house was part of it. So it's not that the Gurukul was teaching only male dominated topics, not at all. If you read our scriptures, you'll discover men were taught everything and more than what women were genuinely taught. So if men got the opportunity to go to Gurukul, what did women do? Where did they learn all of these things from? Well, there are two areas from which um, the women or the young girls learned from. One is their own mothers, because their mothers had learned from their mothers, and the mothers would have also learned from their husbands. The whole purpose of Grihastha life is for the man and woman to live in symbiosis with each other, keeping the Lord in the center at all times. As a matter of fact, Srila Prabhupada writes in one of the Srimad Bhagavatam purports, I think it's Canto 4, Chapter 4, Shloka number 3, where Srila Prabhupada writes that when a man and a woman get married, the man gives up half his body for the sake of the woman, and the woman gives up half her body for the sake of the man. So, in this itself, you can see that there is equality in a marriage. Equality doesn't mean that a woman has to do everything that a man does and a man has to do everything that a woman does. That is not equality. In modern culture, equality has taken on a completely different meaning than what Vedic culture talked about. Equality means a, a woman has certain duties and responsibilities and she has to perform it. Similarly, a man has certain duties and responsibilities, he has to perform it. Both of them have the rights and, in fact, the necessity to perform their duties and responsibilities. But our Vedic culture only didn't look at material things, you know. It only didn't look at whether you are in a body of a woman or a body of a man. It looked beyond to the fact that we are all Atmas. Therefore, equality first came from the perspective of the fact that you are spirit soul. In the Lord's eyes, you are all equal, whether you're in a woman's body or man's body, irrespective of that. In the Lord's eyes, we are equal. So much so that the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita that coming back to Him, you don't have to be a sannyasi. You don't have to be in the caste of the Brahmanas. You know, He says even the lowest of the lowest in the caste system, that is called the Chandalas, even they can come back to Him, provided they know what their position is and what the Lord's position is. The whole purpose of Sanatana Dharma and the topic of equality does not have to do with equality on the physical level. It has to do with equality on the spiritual level, which means each spirit soul, irregardless the kind of body that it is occupying, has the opportunity to go back to the spiritual world. Each Jivatma has an equal opportunity to learn how to love the Lord and to go back to their Supreme Father. So, in that sense, all Jivatmas have equal opportunity. But the greatest opportunity for us comes when we occupy the body of a human being, because the human being has been given the benediction of higher level of consciousness and intelligence. It is not that the animals and birds and bees are not intelligent. Obviously, they are intelligent. But their capacity to understand the difference between material and spiritual begins when you take on the human form. To understand divinity, to understand the divine, comes when you are occupying the human body. So, in our culture, when any festival or any procession actually takes place, the very young kanyas, or they were called kumaris, led the procession. Why? Because the very young girls, 5, 6-year-old girls, 7, 8-year-old girls, are considered to be equivalent to the top most varna, which is the Brahmana. Therefore, every procession begins at the front of that procession is the very young girls or the Kumaris. It's only after the Kumaris come the Brahmanas, after them the Kshatriyas, etc., etc. So just by hearing this, you can understand what position girls and women have in our society. So in our culture, in Vedic culture, you may not hear this in other cultures, but you will hear this in Vedic culture, in Sanatana Dharma, that women have an equal role in decision making. Especially in a marriage, a husband is supposed to consult with his wife before making a decision. So, women are given very high levels of respect. They are also given all due protection by all of society. And at the same time, they enjoy the same freedoms that a man may have. However, even though the woman is given a great deal of freedom, she will always learn to cherish and use that freedom very carefully. So, in the name of equality, if we go about violating what seems to be right and wrong in the name of freedom, then we have been blinded by materialism. A woman has the same level of freedom as any other human being on this planet, but that freedom has to be exercised very judiciously. It has to be exercised keeping the scriptures in mind. So, when we say equality in modern life, equality means if a man can work in a car shop, so can a woman. If a man can work in a petrol bunk, so can a woman. If a man can be a pilot, so can a woman. Yes, all of that is very nice, but that is based on the bodily platform. But scriptures don't talk about equality at all based on the bodily platform. They talk about equality based on the spiritual platform. Because ultimately, we are all Atmas. I may exit this body today. Tomorrow, I may enter a body of another Jivatma. It may be male, it may be female. It may be a higher species, it may be a lower species. So, fighting for rights based on equality, based on the fact that you have this temporary body, doesn't seem to make sense. What makes sense is that we have to understand equality from a spiritual perspective. And that means that equality is based on the spiritual platform. It doesn't mean that it gives rights to a man to subjugate a woman, to treat her like she's less than him. That is not what our Shastras advise at all. So, women are considered to be Shakti, right? So, if you look at the goddesses that we worship, they're all the Shakti potency of the Lord. So, if you look at Saraswati Devi, she represents the creative potency of the Lord. If you look at Lakshmi Devi, she represents the nourishing potency of. What is the one thing that we can think of when we think of Lakshmi Devi? She's always at the lotus feet of her consort, Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayana. She is happiest at the lotus feet of Lord Narayana. So she has that capacity to nourish. So Durga Devi represents the protective potency of the. They say that Mother Durga is actually the mother for all of us here in this material world. Just as Lord Shiva is our father or our designated father, because we have left the spiritual world, Krishna made sure that we had designated parents in the material world as well. So Durga Devi represents that protective potency of the Lord, whereas Kali represents the destructive potency of. So there is Shakti and there is Shaktiman. Shakti comes from Shaktiman. Actually, Shakti and Shaktiman can never be separated. If there is Shaktiman, there has to be Shakti. If there is Shakti, there has to be Shaktiman. So you can see that this whole concept of women being equal to men, yes, that's on the spiritual level. Even on the material level, there is equality, but not in the way in which modern day life is viewing this equality. Modern day life has a very erroneous understanding of equality. It's like saying, a man can become pregnant tomorrow. Why not? I mean, that should also be challenged, right? But nature has intended us to perform different functions in the cosmos. The function and role of a female is very different than the function and role of a male. And when they come together, they complete each other. So if you look at it, there are many exalted women spoken about in the scriptures. One of the women we'll be looking at is Mother Kunti. When she prays to the Lord as he leaves the battlefield and is getting ready to return to Dwaraka, he's been in Kurukshetra with them for a while, even after the battle was won. And Kunti's prayers are exalted prayers that are studied by great personalities. She knew what was really important for every Jivatma in life. How did she know that? As far as we know, she didn't go to a fancy Gurukul where she had one-on-one education with a guru. And yet she understood concepts of Vedic scriptures. Similarly, if you go to the Nagapatnis, Kaliya didn't like the idea of Krishna playing around in the river waters. He thought, hey, this is my house. How dare you come and disturb me in my own residence? And Krishna had to teach him a lesson by saying, look, I'm the ultimate boss. You seem to have forgotten. Everything that you own actually comes from me. When Kaliya was almost at the point of that, the Nagapatnis come up to the surface and worship the Lord, and they tell the Lord, my dear Lord, please forgive our husband. He's not your devotee. Even though we have told him time and again that he should worship you, he has always ignored our advice. See, even women had the right to encourage the males, especially if they were disconnected from scriptures, to teach them that the actual value comes from learning scriptures. So it looks like Kaliya didn't go to any Gurukul. He missed going to the Gurukul, and therefore he missed understanding the position of Lord Narayana, and he missed understanding the position of Jivatma. So therefore the wives are begging forgiveness from the Lord for what the husband has done out of his ignorance. So much so, the Lord accepts the prayers of the Nagapatnis and forgives Kaliya. Kaliya tried to kill Krishna. Even then, the Lord forgave them. Just give me 1 second. Hare Krishna. Yeah, sorry about that. So similarly, Draupadi is also considered a great devotee of the Lord. But the whole Mahabharata was fought because she was mistreated. Because unfortunately, men who were overcome by ignorance and greed did not know they had to always respect a woman. When they overstepped that boundary, of course, they overstepped many boundaries, but the boundary of not learning how to respect a woman was too much. Therefore, the whole war was fought for that one woman who was disrespected. Similarly, Mother Sita, she was kidnapped and using trickery, using stealth, using lies. Ravana came dressed as a sadhu, knowing fully well that if he came as a sadhu, Sita Devi would respond to him differently than if he came dressed as a king. So, for overstepping that boundary, Ravana had to pay a price. So, the whole war between Lord Ram and Ravana happened to protect and save a woman. So, it's not that women have inferior places in Vedic scriptures. We would be very, very wrong. There is one particular canto in the Srimad Bhagavatam where the Lord himself is teaching his mother about scriptures. Her name is Devahuti. And the Lord, when he comes in his incarnation as Kapila, his mother asks him, teach me about scriptures. And he educates her about Sankhya philosophy. So even women were given access to the scriptures by exalted personalities. So if the Lord himself is teaching the scriptures to his mother in Srimad Bhagavatam, why can't you and I access Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, learn something from it, put it to effect in our personal lives, and learn how to be the original spiritual creatures that we are? So on the material platform, there is male and female. On the spiritual platform, we are all females. In the sense, the Shastras say that all souls are female. There is only one Paramatma who is male, and that is Lord Krishna. Every other Jivatma is a female. Therefore, from that perspective, all Jivatmas are equal. We have equal access to the Lord. If we want to learn how to love the Lord and go back to our original place, then it doesn't matter what kind of body you are occupying. Because as a spirit soul, you have the right to have a relationship with the Supreme. It doesn't matter whether you are male or female. So this is a quick view of the scriptures and the scriptures' view of women. And especially in Sanatana Dharma, the status provided to women was very, very high and exalted. As a matter of fact, in our scriptures, no yajna is complete without the woman sitting beside the husband. No yajna can be performed without the woman being by her husband. So a woman is considered Sakshat Lakshmi Devi herself. And therefore, we are going to learn through today's session and through the upcoming sessions how to manage ourselves better, how to view ourselves in a better light, and how to be wholesome, happy women so that we can bring more to our family and expand this vision multiple times over. So this is our Vedic culture. Women were always protected. They were given high positions. They were given all respects. They were given full freedom, although women did not take undue advantage of that freedom. So there's a very famous pastime with Lord Shiva and Sati Devi. When Daksha is performing the sacrifice, Sati Devi asks her husband, how come my father has not invited you? And Lord Shiva said, it's okay. So what if he doesn't invite me? I'm not bothered by it one bit. But Sati Devi could not tolerate it. She felt insulted. How can a father not invite her husband and herself to the yajna? And although Lord Shiva tells her, please do not go to this yajna, it will not be good for you, Sati Devi disagrees with her husband and leaves by herself. So this is why I said, even though women are given complete freedom, in this case, Sati Devi decided to go against her husband's wishes. And things did not turn out as she would have liked it. She gave up her life out of a sense of being insulted by her own father. That is how strong Sati felt, right? So as I was saying, women have all freedom, but they do not misuse that freedom. That freedom is very, very precious. So with that, we will start the second section now. We're going to come to the relevance of the Bhagavad Gita. So to do that, before I get to the slides, I have one more poll. So you may think, why is the Bhagavad Gita relevant to me today? After all, this was some conversation that happened between Lord Krishna and his disciple Arjuna 5,000 years ago. I mean, between 5,000 years ago and today, so much has changed in society. The circumstances are not the same. I mean, there are no kings and queens who are actually technically ruling over large swaths of land. We have democracy we have socialism, we have various forms of government, but there are barely one or two places that are actually being ruled by a king. So this seemed to be a fight between two different clans, or, you know, families belonging to the same clan but seeing themselves as different, specifically the Kauravas I'm speaking about. So why is any of this Bhagavad Gita relevant? Because Arjuna's situation is very different from ours. So actually, the situation which Arjuna had and that he was facing on the battlefield was, I am about to kill, but this time my killing is going to be directed towards my own family members, my guru, my grandfather, whom I admire, whom I love, whom I respect. So when you have to kill your own, then suddenly you have doubts when it comes to what is dharma. So there are many other battles Arjuna fought. He didn't have these doubts. Why suddenly these doubts creep into his mind? Because of the fact that he was dealing with family members. So the conflict for Arjuna was to do with his family. Similarly, we also face a lot of internal conflicts. We face conflicts with others around us. So really, the Lord is teaching Arjuna how to see himself differently, how to not restrict himself by only looking at the fact that that's my cousin, that's my guru, that's my grandfather, those are my in laws. That he has to elevate his consciousness and see everything from a spiritual perspective. If he gets a spiritual vision, then his material decisions will also be sublime. He will make the right decisions. So, similarly, the Lord is teaching us through the Bhagavad Gita. When we develop that spiritual awareness and the spiritual vision, it becomes easier to deal with material problems. So one needs a spiritual vision and a spiritual awareness to deal with material problems. Because material solutions will frustrate us after a certain point. Material solutions to material problems will never be permanent solutions. The only permanent solution for us will be a spiritual solution. So even material problems have to be seen from the perspective of spirituality. So that being said, before we begin, let's offer our most humble obeisances to our founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
So I want all of you to recite this Pranati mantra of our founder Acharya, along with the Panchatattva mantra and the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, because it's important for us to take shelter of Guru Parampara system and the Supreme Lord before we dive into the scriptures. This is important both for the person speaking and the person also listening, because you need the help of Guru Parampara to understand the scriptures. We cannot understand complicated topics on our own. So you can recite after me. You can stay on mute and recite, or you can unmute and recite. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati
देवी
Gauravani
गौरवाणी
Nirvishesha
निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणी
Jaya Shri Krishna
श्रीकृष्ण
Chaitanya
चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद
Nyananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Gadadara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta
Hare
Vrinda
Krishna
Hare
हरे
Krishna
हरे
Hare Hare
Hare
Hare
Rama
Rama
Hare
Hare Rama Rama
हरे
Rama Hare Hare.
So I'm going to come back and ask you 3 questions. So please raise your hand if you want to answer the question. The 3 questions are, who are you? Why are you here? and what is missing in your life. Because this will help us set the stage for why we want to study the Bhagavad Gita. So, Anuradha Mataji, you can read the answers for me from chat.
Binupadi Mataji is saying, I am spirit soul.
I am spirit soul. That's wonderful. Yes.
There's nobody else answering in the chat.
Okay. Why are you here?
Atma again. Ritu Mataji says Atma.
Perfect. We are Atma first.
Shni Mata is Atma. Why are we here?
What is missing in your life? Peace of mind and happiness.
I'm not the body, I'm the soul. Rani Mataji says. Sudeepa Samantha Mataji, for true happiness.
Yes.
I am not
So
the
why
body.
are you here?
True happiness is one. Sudeepa Mataji mentioned that. Devshni Mataji is saying, I'm here to gain the ultimate knowledge and happiness.
Very nice.
For peace of mind and Krishna, understanding Krishna. Then Sai Mataji says, I am soul missing one. Sorry, 1 second.
So someone, I think Rani has said, build a relationship with the Lord. That's why you're here.
Yes.
That's the purpose of life. Someone said to realize myself, so self-realization. What is, why are you here? Yeah.
Sai Mataji is saying missing happiness and purpose of life. Kritika
Yes.
Mataji says to connect my inner self to Krishna and motivation. Then Lalita Mataji says I'm Atma, to realize myself and realization. Divyashni Pandey Mataji says, she's asking a question, how to surrender unto him.
Oh, that is $1 million question.
Pushpa Mataji says, a minute of Lord Krishna. I think minute she meant part of Lord Krishna. Happiness is missing. Anu Mataji said. Ritu Mataji says bhakti, for bhakti karne ke liye.
Why are you here? Bhakti karne ke liye.
Bhakti
Yes.
karne ke liye.
Very nice.
Present world to Krishna consciousness. Divya Mataji is saying to present the world to Krishna consciousness. We are here to learn how to love Supreme. Anupama Mataji says that. We are part and parcel of Krishna. Binopadi Mataji says that. I think most of them are, yes, to find the purpose of life and learn Gyan Yoga. Nalini.
Very nice. Very lovely answers. I think most of you have got it. But then we are going to go to the scriptures and see if those answers are validated by what all of you have said. So who are you? So Krishna in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita says the following. So one of you can recite after me. Avinashitu tadvidhi. Anuradha Mataji, you can recite after me.
Avinashitu tadvidhi.
Yena sarvamidam tatam.
Yena sarvamidham tatam.
Vinasham avyayasyasya.
Vinashamas avyayasyasya.
Nakaschit kartum arhati.
Nakaschit kartum arhati.
So here the Lord is saying that which pervades the whole entire body, you should know to be indestructible. So Krishna is saying, you can keep changing bodies, bodies will get destroyed. That's just the way I have designed everything. But I've also designed it in such a way that the soul is always eternal. It will always exist. It will never be destroyed. Therefore, Arjuna, your weapons, even though you are living in fear that you're going to kill your cousins, you're going to kill your guru, you're going to kill Bhishma Dev, you need not worry because your weapons may touch their bodies, but no weapon can touch the soul because that soul belongs to me. So the soul is always indestructible. Therefore, Krishna says, no one, absolutely no one, is able to destroy that imperishable soul. So, which means Krishna is saying, we are spirit soul first. We are not the body first. Bodies we have changed, so many bodies in so many lifetimes we've changed. The soul has stayed the same. Sometimes we have occupied a male body, sometimes we have occupied a female body. But the soul has stayed the same. That means Krishna is saying, I want you to rethink the way you're looking at life. Don't think of this in the concept of, oh, that's my family member. Think of it in the concept of what is the correct dharma right now. There are certain duties that we have based on the body. There are certain duties that we have based on the soul. And Krishna is saying both of them go on hand in hand. And sometimes when there is a conflict, it is the duty of the soul that may take predominance over the duty towards a body. Although the soul acts through the body, the soul cannot act on its own. It has to occupy a body to act. Nevertheless, Krishna says, remember, we are all Atmas. Therefore, Krishna says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor these kings. So Krishna is saying, I have always existed. You have always existed. They have always existed, and they will all continue to exist. So Krishna is talking about the soul here. So who are you? We are spirit soul. But because of this body, we are having multiple experiences. Sometimes we are in the body of a butterfly. Sometimes we are in the body of a cockroach. Sometimes we are in the body of an elephant. Sometimes we are in the body of a tiger. And very rarely do we get an opportunity to be in the body of a human being. So, but throughout all those bodies, the only thing that has been consistent has been the soul. So the soul keeps changing clothes, and Krishna says, don't be bewildered by that. Now, to the question of why you are here. So you can repeat after me. This is from Shloka number 3 of chapter 5 in the Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says, Jneyasya nitya sannyasi,
Niyasya nitya sannyasi,
yo na dveshti na kankshati,
yo naddeshita kankshati,
nirdvandvo hi mahabaho,
nirdvandvo hi mahabhaho,
sukham bandhat pramuchyate.
sukham bandhat pramukhyate.
Here the Lord is telling Arjuna, we have to develop equanimity. So Krishna says, one who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced, which means there are two things. One is the activity itself, and one is the fruit that we get as a result of our actions. Krishna says for both of that we have to be renounced. Sometimes we have to do things that we may not find very palatable. Sometimes we do things that are very enjoyable for us. But when it comes to our duties and responsibilities, Krishna says we should always adhere to our duties and responsibilities, irrespective of whether we enjoy it or not. The purpose of doing your duty and responsibility is not to only selectively select those things that you enjoy doing. Even things that are very important for us, even if it is not enjoyable, we must perform our duty. As a matter of fact, the entire Bhagavad Gita is about dharma. It is not about karma. Krishna repeatedly stresses to Arjuna he must perform his duty and responsibility. Otherwise, why would Krishna tell Arjuna repeatedly, get up and fight, stand up and fight, pick up your bow and fight and enjoy, enjoy the victory, Krishna says in chapter 11. Repeatedly, Krishna tells Arjuna, you have to get up and fight. So similarly, when we are facing difficult situations, we have to fight for what is right. But that fighting doesn't have to involve weapons. That fighting has to involve scriptural knowledge. When you have scriptural knowledge, then you can defeat ignorance without lifting a weapon. Your weapon is your knowledge, your understanding of the scriptures. Once you understand scriptures, Krishna says such a person becomes free from all dualities. And therefore, they are not under the bondage of karma, they become completely liberated. So even when you act, there are certain results that you enjoy, there are certain results that you really don't like. Even when you get the results, Krishna says, be renounced. Be like a sannyasi. It shouldn't matter whether you got good or bad. What matters is whether you did the right thing. After doing the right thing, if you get the wrong result, don't worry about it. Because anyway, results are not in your hand, as Krishna says in 2.43. What is that famous shloka? Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana mate sangostu karmani. So Krishna says, do not be attached to the results, but at the same time, do not be detached from your duties and responsibilities. You should always perform your duties and responsibilities. So why are you here? You are here for self-realization. Through the process of self-realization, you can develop detachment from all things material, from problems, from anxiety, from fear, from anger. All of these things you can develop detachment from. But there is self-realization, there is God realization, and then there is a realization that the two of you have a relationship, that you and the Lord have an eternal relationship that can never be broken by anyone. Although self-realization is one of the topics in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says if you focus on God realization, automatically you will have self-realization and you will also understand the sambandha between Jivatma and Paramatma. So if we prioritize understanding who the Supreme Lord is, automatically by understanding the Lord, you'll understand who you are, what your position is, and your position is you are eternally the servant of the Supreme. So it doesn't matter whether you're Anil Ambani or whoever it is, Mukesh Ambani, people who are very, very rich, they are also servants of the Lord. People who are abjectly poor, they are servants of the Lord. If you're in a male body, you are servant of the Lord. Female body, you are servant of the Lord. That designation, that ID card is your permanent ID card. Your permanent ID card is that you are Atma, the Lord is Paramatma, and you are always subservient to Paramatma. So Krishna says, if you've understood Paramatma, automatically you've understood yourself and understood what your position is, which is your position is subservient to the Supreme. So yes, the goal of life is self-realization, but self-realization can be achieved through God realization. When you realize that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, you are considered a self-realized soul. You don't have to go to the forest and do anything or do any meditation. So what's actually missing in our life? As all of you rightly said, our connection to Krishna is missing in our life. So here in this particular shloka, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu
Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu
anusmara yudhya cha
mam anusmara yudhya cha
mayyarpita mano buddhihi
mayarpita mano buddhihi
mame vaishyasya samshayah.
mami vaishyasya samshayah.
Here Krishna is telling Arjuna in chapter 8, shloka number 7. What is Krishna instructing Arjuna? Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. So Krishna is saying, yes, fighting is a tough job for you, considering that you have very close relationships with the people you're about to fight. But my dear Arjuna, it'll be far more easier for you to handle this difficult situation if you think about me and then you do your duty of fighting. So sometimes we also get caught up in so many different conflicts in our lives. So Krishna is giving us an instruction. We have to always think of him and still perform our duty, even though performing our duty may seem to cause and create many, many additional difficulties for us. So the first instruction from Krishna is to always think of me. Why? Because if you're thinking of Krishna and performing your duty, the Lord will intervene and correct things in your life. The Lord will always be there for his devotee. So Krishna is saying, if you think of me, I will come personally in your life. I will protect you. So Krishna says, with your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. That means if you do everything by keeping Krishna in mind, that you're doing your duty and responsibility, not to please your husband, not to please your family members, but you're doing it to please Krishna, suddenly everything changes. The framework within which you see life changes. Because suddenly you're not cooking for your family members, you're cooking for Krishna. You're not keeping the house clean for yourself or your family members, you're keeping the house clean for Krishna. You're not giving in charity to feel good about yourself, you're giving in charity to please Krishna. So Krishna says, like this, if you dedicate everything that you do, if you dedicate your activities to me, then automatically your mind and intelligence is fixed on me. Then how is it that you will not come back to me? It's impossible. So what is missing in our life? We have disconnected. We have forgotten what is the password to that Wi-Fi connection to Krishna. You see, Krishna is very far away, yet he's very near. You can't see him, but that doesn't mean you can't connect to him. So the password to connect to this Wi-Fi, the security password, is bhakti. In Christianity, they say prayer connects you to the Supreme Lord. Yes, even in our culture, prayer connects you to the Supreme Lord, but there are so many other things that connect us to the Supreme Lord. Hearing about the Lord connects us to the Supreme Lord. Chanting about the holy names of the Lord connects us to the Supreme Lord. So Prahlad tells the students in school, in Srimad Bhagavatam, that there are 9 angas to bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Atmanivedanam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. These are the 9 different ways in which one can connect to the Supreme. The first one is Shravanam. So Krishna says you should always be hearing about me. You should always be reading about me, because just by hearing about me and reading about me, you're connected. Your Wi-Fi connection is very, very strong through Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. If you do Shravanam and Kirtanam, automatically you will have Smaranam. You will always be remembering the Lord, which is what the Lord is advising Arjuna. He says, remember me and then you do your fighting. Okay? So these 3 are the answers to the questions. But the problem we have is we tend to complicate our lives too much. We create problems where none exist, and sometimes problems are foisted on us by others. What to do? So the question is, are we all really healthy and happy? And if you want to be healthy and happy, you need to worry about your spiritual health and your spiritual happiness first. Because with your spiritual health and spiritual happiness comes material health and material happiness. So here, Martin Luther King, who was a civil rights activist in those days in the United States, there used to be segregation laws, that there was a separate school for blacks, separate toilets for blacks. They couldn't sit with the white people. So Martin Luther King was fighting against this so-called injustice in society. So he says, ultimately, he also he was well read in the Bible. So he would take solace in understanding the Bible to understand the challenges that we are facing externally. So he says that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. So the ultimate test for us, for Arjuna here, is not when he had happy days. Now he has very uncomfortable situation. He has to figure out how he's going to kill his own, how he's going to overcome his own mental blocks and emotional blocks to challenge his own family members who've gone down the wrong path. So every time when there is a challenge or a controversy, that's when you're truly tested. When everything is going smoothly, we don't have need for God, need for prayers, anything, because we think we are in control. So actually taking care of our spiritual health is the most important aspect that is being taught in the Bhagavad Gita. Because if you take care of your spiritual health, it'll automatically lead to inner peace, irregardless of who's creating what hangama in and around you. So this is the most important thing we have to learn, is that we have to have some spiritual connection to Krishna if we want to lead an anxiety-free life. Yes? So our own mind becomes the enemy for us. Our mind gets embroiled with anger, confusion, disappointment, loneliness, frustration, anxiety, despair, and sometimes it even leads to the unthinkable, suicide. So if we are able to really manage our mind, we can really manage our lives very well. So there is a very famous management guru, and there is a management philosophy that I think is applicable equally in our daily life. The only thing you can control is yourself. You can control your actions, you can control your thoughts, you can control your responses, you can control your attitude. You cannot control how other people think, how other people act, how other people behave, what other people's attitudes are. No matter how much you try, you will not be able to control. So the first thing the Bhagavad Gita focuses on is yourself. There is an entire chapter dedicated to controlling your mind, which is chapter 6. And Krishna talks about the very complex and difficult process of dhyana yoga, meditation, to learn how to control your mind. So much so Arjuna says, my dear Lord, you are identifying a process that is so difficult. I don't think I'll be able to do that. So immediately Arjuna rejects dhyana yoga, not for me. I can't do meditation. But there are other ways you can control yourself. And the main way that Krishna talks about is through bhakti yoga. By worshipping Krishna, you will learn slowly how to control your actions, your thoughts, your responses, your attitude. You don't have to artificially learn how to control yourself. It'll come naturally by worshipping Krishna. And then what is very fascinating is that when you learn how to control yourself, your circle of influence broadens. The more you are peaceful, you are calm, people are more willing to listen to you. When you are agitated, they become agitated. So there are a lot of people you can't control, but you can influence them through your own behavior and conduct. And then, of course, there is the circle of concern. You may have some indirect ways of influencing it, but practically speaking, you can't do much beyond that. Politicians, you can select who you want to be your politician. But after that, it's beyond your control, whether they get into a war, how they deal with the economy, how they deal with pandemics, weather incidences, all of this are beyond our control. It is in our area of concern, but we can't control it. So the most important takeaway from these three circles is focus on the innermost circle, which is learning to control oneself. So Stephen Covey, who's one of the management gurus, writes a very nice book. You can all read that book. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Actually, all 7 habits he talks about are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. So somewhere, I think he has picked it up from scriptures. So here, Stephen Covey says, be a light, not a judge. Be a model, not a critic, which means don't spend your time looking for faults in others. Spend a little bit more time working on yourself, working on perfecting yourself, becoming a better person. So if you do this, he says, little by little, your circle of influence will explode and you will avoid, when you begin to focus on yourself and making yourself a better person, you will avoid the cancers of complaining, criticizing, competing, comparing, and cynicism, all of which reflect victimization, all of which are the exact opposite of being proactive. So we have to take responsibility for ourselves. As I said earlier, if we take individual responsibility for how we are, how we behave, what's our attitude. And if every one of us does that, can you imagine what a beautiful world we'll be living in? There will be no conflict because each of us is working on ourselves instead of pointing fingers at each other. So ultimately, what are we looking for? We're all searching for happiness. Is that happiness external? I mean, if I buy something, will I be happy? Yeah, maybe temporarily. I mean, even the people who win lotteries are not happy. You would think they should be the happiest people on earth because suddenly they have so much wealth. Everybody is running out of the woodworks telling them, hey, remember me, I'm your relative. They will come for loans and other things. So they say that the people who win lotteries are actually the unhappiest people because suddenly, with so much wealth, they don't know how to manage themselves. They don't know how to deal with others. So real happiness is internal happiness. It lies in the spiritual realm. So we will end today's session with this wonderful instruction from Srila Prabhupada, where he says, every one of us are searching after happiness, but we do not know what real happiness is. We see so much advertised about happiness, but practically speaking, we see so few happy people. This is because so few people know that the platform of real happiness is beyond temporary things. Remember, your family is temporary, everything that you own is temporary, your wealth is temporary, your beauty is temporary, your intelligence is temporary. All of this you have to give up when the soul exits the body. That means if you are intelligent, you will know that this real happiness actually exists in your relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. And it is this real happiness that the Lord is teaching Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. My dear Arjuna, yes, all of these people who are your relatives, they are all temporarily your relatives on the material platform. But I am your best well-wisher, so you should really be worried about establishing a strong relationship with me. Because if you do that, that's where real happiness comes from. So we will complete the rest of the session of the significance of the Bhagavad Gita tomorrow. Please do join us. I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Hare Krishna.